All right, we shall begin. Today we are going to be presenting a brief overview of the GHS SDS training program. Now, the GHS SDS is a globally harmonized system, and SDS stands for Safety Data Sheets, which will be now the new replacements and official replacements for the MSDSs, the Material Safety Data Sheets. Now, the globally harmonized system is now part of an international hazard communication system, as opposed to each region having its own hazard communication system relative to the region. So Canada would be WHMIS, America would be OSHA, and so on and so on. So the problem is that there was no main international standard for safety data sheets, and there was a lot of discrepancies amongst countries that shipped hazardous products to each other, and therefore creating many discrepancies, which forced the resulting creation of the GHS SDS. Now, my name is Ben Shea from UltraChem Labs Corp. I am the marketing manager, and I'll be presenting this presentation today. It will be about 20 minutes, and I'll be taking any questions at the end of the presentation. Now, the first point is to define what the SDS is and what the purpose for the GHS SDS is. And the definition for the MSDS was originally providing the standard that gave workers the right to know. Now, we provided workers, manufacturers, distributors, users of chemicals with the right to know, which was the MSDS, which provided them basic information on how to handle hazardous products. And now the development of the SDS is to provide them information on understanding the information at hand and enforcing a training program to make sure that all of the SDSs per company are explained and trained to their workers and staff, especially to those who are handling the chemicals themselves. Now, what this does is it provides improvements in quality of hazardous information in the workplace, to provide a safer condition for employees by providing easily understandable info on appropriate handling and safe use of hazardous chemicals. Now, what is the GHS specifically? The globally harmonized system, the GHS, is a system for standardizing and harmonizing the classification and labeling of chemicals. It is a logical and comprehensive approach to defining health, physical, and environmental hazard of chemicals, creating classification processes that use available data on chemicals for comparison with the defined hazard criteria, and communicating hazard information as well as protective measures on labels and safety data sheets. So all in all, providing a more specific, detailed list of potential hazards to your health, to yourself, to the ones around you, and also the environment, the hazards to the environment. And in order to create a comprehensive classification process to make sure that these are compared and cross-compared with available test data per product that is being specified on each SDS. Okay. Now, the SDS versus the MSDS. Now, what is the difference? Well, the specific differences fall closely to what the SDS provides, which is now standard pictograms, which are required on each SDS. So pictograms will be examples of something that is flammable or something that is corrosive, and etc. And these pictograms must be listed on the SDS based on how hazardous and dangerous the product is and how hazardous it is. Okay. Now, that is classified by what is called keywords and phrases. Now, there are two keywords. One is warning and one is danger. Now, those keywords, based on what the product, which keyword the product will require, those keywords are determined by test processes. So if your product has third-party testing results, then you would include those results based on the criteria that the SDS provides, and through that criteria, your product will be either deemed warning, which is a lower hazardous threat, or danger, which is a higher hazardous threat. And the new GHS labels and updated employee training will need to be conducted, and chemicals will now be classified into two categories. So the GHS labels and SDS training has to be conducted by certain dates. If you are a manufacturer or distributor or end user, those dates are available for you at the end of this presentation. Okay, now the chemicals will be classified into two categories which fall under physical hazards and health hazards. The physical hazards will fall under flammable, explosive, corrosives, which will also be represented by standard pictograms, and health hazards such as acute toxicity, irritants, carcinogens, and several others, which there are pictograms as well, and those will have to be listed again if, based on test results, this product is deemed at a certain level of high acute toxicity, irritant, or carcinogen. And through there, the keyword and phrases will also be stated on the SDS. So it is the responsibility of the manufacturer of the product to provide these test results in the SDS so that ones can follow along with the classification of that product if they so require. So within these sections, the chemical will be assessed to determine how hazardous it is and be given a further classification from 1 to 4, with 1 being the most hazardous and 4 being the least hazardous. And this differs from the commonly used NFPA ratings, where 4 was the most hazardous classification. So now it is backwards. 1 is the most and 4 is the least, and anything above what falls under the 4th classification in terms of hazardous ingredients and hazardous amounts will not be listed. There will not be a number for it. It will just provide no number. So it will be within a realm of non-hazardous. So the meaning of the new additions. Well, the use of the GHS pictograms, signal words, hazard, and precautionary statements, they are meant to help end users to understand the hazards associated with the chemicals they use, as each chemical label in SDS will have a similar appearance. Now, this means that employers and employees are required to read and understand the labels and SDSs and can easily find the relevant information in a familiar format. So it is a process of standardizing information, making sure that if either you're looking for a pictogram, a signal word, a hazard, or precaution statement, that you'll be able to find it quickly. And we can show you, for example, these pieces of information will be on page 1 or 2 of your SDS. Now we're breaking down the SDS. The SDS is the international form of the material safety data sheet. So it's the international form. So all countries must use this format going forward. Now, while the MSDS came in multiple formats, the SDS is published in only one format. Now, that format consists of a specific order and a set of headlines. Now, that information and order is as follows. However, before we go forward with that, there are governing bodies in terms of safety organizations, let's say in Europe or in Asia or in Canada. And Canada, the organization is WHMIS, right? So WHMIS does have its own specific specifications on certain safety precautions and certain hazardous precautions. And those can also be included on the SDS, but it is not part of the main sections that are absolutely required. They are more added as additions to the later sections of the SDS, which are not a prerequisite by any means. Now, we are not going to go through each section because that would take way too long. So if you want to arrange for another time to go through each section one by one and break down the differences between the new SDS and MSDS standards, we can definitely arrange for another time to do that. But for now, I just want to show you the amount of sections that are needed and the ones that are a prerequisite. So the first one is the product and company identification sections, where we will be including basic company information, emergency phone numbers, etc. And here's some examples of the differences of the MSDS and SDS. Here's the signs of the pictograms that are going to be included onto the SDS if the product falls under the warning or danger signs. So section 2 is upon hazards identifications. You can see that there's quite a bit of requirements here. Section 2 of the MSDS, section 2 of the SDS. Section 3, composition information on ingredients. Here's the examples. First aid measures. As you can see, SDS has a lot more comprehensive information and instructions on how to manage first aid measures. We have firefighting measures, section 5. Accidental release measures. Handling and storage. Exposure controls, personal protection, section 8. Section 9, physical and chemical properties. And this is one of the most extensive differences between the two formats, where the SDS requires a lot of information, and all that information will be provided by the manufacturer. Section 10, stability and reactivity with other chemicals. Section 11, toxicological information. And this section 11 is very important in terms of deeming health hazards. There will be test results provided. Usually manufacturers will have those test results provided by third-party test organizations. And through these test results, you will find out if this product is deemed under a warning or danger hazard, which will include the pictogram and different precautionary statements depending on how hazardous the products are. And just as an example, these examples for the SDS and MSDSs are taken from one product, which is a product that we have, which is Quantum X, which is a environmentally friendly floor finish product. Now, section 12 provides ecological information, and section 13 provides disposal considerations. Number 14, transport information. 15, regulatory information. So here, the 15th and 14th sections are not completely required or a prerequisite by any means, and section 16 is providing just any other information. If you want to include NFPA classifications, a disclaimer from the manufacturer, date of preparation, there's some information where they can find that in section 16. But up to section 13 is where the prerequisites will end. So we want to make sure that the sections on 1 to 13 are very, very detailed. And most manufacturers will make sure that they provide focus on those sections. So as you can see in section 15, here you can provide different state or country regulated procedures or organizational bodies. For example, in sections 15, you have the state regulation for California, Prop 65, which this product falls under. Okay. Now from there, why the switch? Why the switch from MSDS to SDS? Well, the main purpose of the switch from the MSDS to SDS is to create a simpler and more effective way to communicate the hazards of a chemical. Now, prior to the switch, companies may have had MSDSs in multiple formats with information on those formats in varied locations. By moving to a universal format, it makes it easier for employees to find information on a chemical and also lowers the burden for chemical manufacturers. There will be less confusion. It will be much simpler to comprehend. And because the regulatory bodies in the United States and in Canada will be enforcing these standards, as each of these regulatory bodies fall under the globally harmonized system, they will enforce times of training. We could be subject to audit to make sure that we have finished the training. So for all distributors, it's very important for them to provide paper proof that the company has undergone training with their employees, and that they have been signed off on it. There's proof of it, so that in case that they get audited by OSHA or any other regulatory body that is checking, that there is no liability and the training has been complete. So will the change require that both MSDS and SDS be kept for the same product? Well, there's no requirement to keep the old MSDSs on file once you have obtained the SDSs to replace them. However, employers may want to keep an electronic copy on file, especially if existing stocks of the chemical were purchased under the older MSDS. Now, here are the training deadlines that most companies are not aware of. Therefore, they keep hearing sounds of GHS and SDS coming up, that they have to be updated. However, nobody has been provided any dates. Well, these are the dates here. As you can see, employers train workers on new labels and MSDS formats was supposed to be done over 2 years ago. Manufacturers are held to a deadline of June 1st in 2015 to update all their labels and MSDSs, which is something that we have done. The new labels will be going out soon as the new batches are printed. Now, December 1st, 2015, deadline pertains to the distributor. So no distributors are to ship chemicals labeled under the old hazard communication standard. So the old MSDSs that fall under the OSHA specific standards that are older. Now, June 1st, 2016, employers have to be fully compliant with the GHS. Yes. So you must replace your MSDS and your MSDSs by SDSs by this absolute deadline. Okay. So thank you for listening to this presentation. Again, my name is Ben Shea, Marketing Manager for UltraChem Labs Corp. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, please let me know now. And if you have any questions later on, please email me at benshea@ultrachemlabs.com. That's benshieH@ultrachemlabs.com. Thank you for your time. Talk to you soon.